I remember one night I was watching late night cartoons in the living room of my small town home and discovered what I thought at the time was the coolest and most insane direction of one of my favorite video game series of all time, the official teaser trailer for Resident Evil 4. Oh man, what a great fucking game, and I mean that. There exists a whole network, an entire universe of games that can be played, but it's rare that we find games from the past that are still worth anything in today's standards. You might play the original San Andreas and think to yourself, hey, this game's really great, and I agree, but it'll never be as cool as the first time you played. Still though, you would say that that game is perfect in every way due to how well designed and fun it is. There even exists a mod for Resident Evil 4 called the Ultimate HD Edition that completely overhauls the game's graphics to make them upscaled and more pleasurable to the eye. It's magnificent the amount of love the game still receives today. Resident Evil 4 was almost like some sort of weird drug-induced, hyper-fueled version of Resident Evil 2, with the returning lead of Leon Scott Kennedy, one of the sole survivors of the Raccoon City outbreak, which, if you're a fan as much as I am, you're already caught up with the lore. It's hard for me to pinpoint anything specific to talk about in terms of stuff that hasn't been covered. The only game I can think of that has been gutted, dusted, tested for samples, brushed, tickled, and played as often as anything else today is probably Resident Evil 4.
Got that right.
Who hasn't played this masterpiece that was constructed for our adolescent entertainment, and why is it still so good after all this time? I don't need to go into the details of the mechanics since that was a major defining factor of the gameplay at the time. I remember feeling strange at first with Leon's camera hovering directly behind him in a shoulder view angle. I was more accustomed to the fixed camera angles, and in some pre-beta footage of Resident Evil 4, you can see that the original concept was to use a fixed camera angle, but more in the style of Silent Hill. Personally, I feel like the game would have bombed if they didn't give you a shoulder perspective. Now that we've all played it on repeat and killed the Ganados 100 million fucking times, it doesn't seem like there's any other way I'd want it, or anyone else for that matter. Before I talk about why I love this game and my early memories with it, I think it's important to address that not everybody is a fan of Resident Evil 4. When the game first came out, a lot of people were blown away by its graphics and gameplay, its story was solid, and the characters all had heart and soul poured into each and every one of them. But one feature seems to rub people the wrong way about this game, and I somewhat understand why. It seems like every time I talk Resident Evil, I need to clarify. Most fans argue that Resident Evil is strictly a horror game, and that there should be absolutely no action and more claustrophobic environments, fixed camera angles, and a limited inventory. Others I've met in the fan base have claimed that Resident Evil is like a child, and it must change with growth and grow with change, embracing the smaller adjustments and tweaks that the series has made along the way. For example, zombies being the main enemies in the first game until Resident Evil 7 was released and the molded became a new standard for a short time. I mean, obviously Resident Evil 4 was new with introducing the Ganados and Los Illuminados, but they're kinda zombies if you think about it, so I don't know. I guess that's an opinion thing. I'm not counting anything in Resident Evil 6 because that game is shit. Moving on. For me, I fall into the I don't give a shit category. Lots of people like to point the finger at Resident Evil 4 and blame it for the cause of the series almost failing as a whole. But personally, I think 5 was the straw that broke the camel's back, and Resident Evil 6 was just a bad joke. Well, now I'm on to the harder part of this video, talking about what I love about Resident Evil 4. If you're unfamiliar with the story, I'll catch you up really quick. Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2 makes a return as a US government agent sent into a remote location in Europe in hopes to find the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. When he arrives, he finds that things are going from bad to worse, and the only way out is to fight through it all. You're outnumbered. Your guns may protect you for a short amount of time, but eventually the Ganados will grab a hold of you. It's an epic game full of epic quotes and scenes that still stand out as far as the eye can see. Just to name a few of my favorite segments of the game, there's the village, Dr. Salvador, the big cheese, the Salazar boss fight, the reintroduction of Ada's character, the Regenerators, and of course, there's that dog. It's insane to me that one game from 2005 can become not only one of the most played games of all time, but revered as a nail in the gaming coffin that seals the deal on what it means to be a truly great video game full of different enemies and creatures that nobody could possibly prepare for in reality. The hardest part of this video is going to be talking about this game because, honestly, what else can I say? I've played it 100 million times. On PlayStation 2, I used to have a memory card with a save that showed I was on round 132. I had played it a lot throughout my childhood and memorized every single fucking aspect of it as if it were a religion or a cult or something. I pray that the remake keeps tickling my balls, and I hope that it's better than the original, but holy fuck, that's such a hard goal to achieve. Anyways, now let me talk about why I like the game and all the different experiences I've had growing up and playing it. The first enemy you encounter might as well be a joke, since you'll face so many other threats throughout the story, both bigger and smaller. The Ganados were once a village full of happy and subtle people who were transformed by Las Plagas, or in other words, the T-virus of this game. Much like the T-virus, Las Plagas is capable of taking up multiple forms of the host, doing seemingly whatever is necessary to ensure that the player is dead. The construction process around the Ganados is probably one of the coolest I've ever seen in my life, in terms of video game enemies. I'm not just talking about their designs, because I'm highly aware that there are only like 5 different actual types of villager. You either get my father, Jeff Thomas, or you get this guy who, for some reason, always reminded me of the blue alien from Space Jam. It's the way that they operate that make the Ganados a truly terrifying threat. As a kid, I used to make fun of what the villagers would shout at Leon, and I probably poorly mimicked it to the best of my ability. Without any prior knowledge as to what the villagers were saying, I had no idea how gruesome and scary it could be. There's one in particular, Te voy a matar. Apparently translates to, I'm going to rip you to pieces. If some crazy bitch was chasing after me with a knife screaming something like that, I'd be fucking terrified. The voice lines from the Ganados are some of my favorites. It gets even creepier when you venture into the castle segment with the cult group known as the Los Illuminados. These guys are a lot creepier than Ganados, mostly because they mumble and whisper all of their lines. I don't think there's a single audible recording of dialect where the hooded heathens scream or yell besides if they fall from a great height. They might whisper loudly, but for the most part they give off very dangerous and uncomfortable vibes. I love it. Way later in the game, you'll be facing the Island Militia, which is personally when I feel the game starts to drag, at least for a little bit. Before we get to that though, what's the biggest thing I want to mention first? Well, how about the plethora of unlockables and extra modes? This was the first game I played that had a New Game Plus feature, which basically means you can carry all of your old items and stuff that you've been upgrading along the way over to a new save file. It was pretty cool to be able to do another run of the game with stronger weapons and a more action-esque playstyle, accessing certain treasures and items that I was unable to before. On top of that, when you complete the main story, you automatically unlock Ada's campaign, which is relatively short and can be frustrating on the first playthrough, and I feel like I have to mention this because nobody ever talks about this when they talk about this game. The cutscenes for Ada's campaign are shit. Like, this is bad. This is like watching a video off of a cell phone from 2002. I don't know why they did that. Like, for some reason, you can't see these cutscenes remastered unless you have the Ultimate HD texture pack, or like the whole thing downloaded. I don't know, it's just a weird decision. Why didn't they upscale it? And what's even weirder is they have this cutscene here from Separate Ways, which is the same exact cutscene as here, but this one is higher quality. So it almost makes you wonder why they included it at all. But it's sad that this is considered unique. A developer granting you more storyline access for free. In today's day and age, that's unheard of. Even Callisto fucked up and ended their game with a DLC bait and hook. But if I have to mention Callisto Protocol ever again, I'm gonna rip my fucking skin off and set myself on fire. The coolest aspect of the New Game Plus was the simple fact that you could go back into the game with all of the experience you have, memorize every room and hallway alike, and as I stated before, find new things you may have missed. I guess if you wanted to, you could also bring an RPG to murder the first Ganado you encounter. It's hilarious, but that's exactly what I love about it. Being able to choose and wanting to play it again for wacky encounters like this. One thing I wanted to mention was my loadout for the game. My go-to inventory looks like this. A Red 9 equipped with the stock. A riot gun, just because I think it's fucking awesome. A TMP, because it's the only affordable rapid-fire weapon available off the bat. Finally, I have health and ammo, all neatly stacked. My fucking guinea pigs just scared me, because they went crazy. Finally, I have health and ammo, all neatly stacked and placed exactly the way I want. I have kept this same loadout for Leon's inventory since I've started playing. Lots of you may be thinking that the Red 9 is an odd choice, but it's actually the best. When fully upgraded, the Red 9 is a force to be fucked with. It kills most enemies in 3 to 4 shots, and when upgraded with the stock, it basically becomes a semi-automatic rifle. The riot gun fires slowly, but for some reason I have always felt like it packs more of a punch than the striker. The striker is clearly stronger, but I always seem to land more critical hits with the riot gun, and it feels more satisfying to shoot. Sometimes I'll feel ballsy and I'll buy a broken butterfly with my Gucci money and kill everything in my path. I've tried long ago to do a Magnum only run in Resident Evil 4, but it's way easier said than done. Since Magnums are the most powerful weapons in any of the Resident Evil games, the ammunition is scarcer than unspoiled meat on a dead carcass. Each stack of Magnum ammo tops at 10 rounds, and once you have a full stack, it'll become even harder to find any more. Sometimes you'll get lucky, or if you're an expert like me, you'll know exactly where to look for the Magnum ammo that spawns on every playthrough. The only reason I didn't complete that challenge was because I couldn't save up enough ammo on enough playthroughs. It just takes a lot of time and a lot of patience. I'm sure it can be done. Now, the other thing I love, I mentioned already how creepy it can be when you're running away from enemies and you can hear them throw insults and threats at Leon. Games like Outlast replicated this formula long after this game was released, and it worked really well there too. I loved finding out what the Ganados were saying to Leon. As a kid, I never knew they were speaking Spanish, or at least some rendition of it. I'd always mimic their voice lines with my siblings as a joke. Like when the Los Illuminados say, "Morir es vivir," it means to die is to live is to die. They can be heard chanting this over and over again throughout the game, and honestly, I used to think he was saying Moldy STD.
Morir es vivir. Morir es vivir.
Now, I'm highly aware that that is very inappropriate and disgusting and clearly wrong. I just thought it was a little funny bit of trivia I'd share with you. The characters are fantastic and deserve every single award necessary for their roles. I could be dramatic right now, and I know that this game's writing is very much 2005.
I've been expecting you, my brethren.
No thanks, bro.
But it's the characters that we've embossed on our hearts and come to love with each new playthrough. Leon's return to the Resident Evil series was a much welcome one, and featured, in my honest opinion, the greatest voice actor for Leon S. Kennedy to ever walk the earth, Paul Mercier. I have no idea if he's still around anymore, but from what I understand, this was his only role as Leon in the Resident Evil universe, besides the Resident Evil Degeneration animated movie. Ashley Graham, who is the president's daughter, we all fucking know her. Oh god. Although it's a nuisance to have to constantly drag Ashley all around the villages and castle and island, I can't help but feel like it's worth the journey in the end, since she at least contributes to some decent dialogue at times, like when Luis makes a joke about her breasts.
I see that the president's equipped his daughter with ballistics too.
How rude! And I don't believe there's any relevance with my figure and my standing. Who are you?
Oh, excuse me, or...
Oh, Jesus Christ, Sandy Cheeks. By the way, I'm not kidding about that. That's the same voice actress for Sandy Cheeks, Carolyn Lawrence, doing the voice of Ashley Graham. It took me my whole life to figure that out. Luis is another great character who adds a certain charm to the game that I remember thinking he should have gone way further down the line. I mean, holy fuck. Luis's death practically had me in tears the first time I played this, and honestly, if it's pronounced Louis or Louise, I'm just gonna say Louis, I guess, from now on, make it easier for myself. It's strange considering how most modern games like to rush their side characters along and do whatever it takes to ensure the player is alone for majority of the crisis they are enduring. This was a major L in my opinion for the series. Why does Louis have to die? I understand that he worked for Saddler as a researcher for Las Plagas, but he definitely redeemed himself with his charismatic personality and attractive dialogue. Plus, fending off Ganados while back to back with Louis? Fucking god tier. There's even a hidden cutscene at this part where Louis will kill Leon if he gets shot too many times. It's actually hilarious, and if you're like me, you can imagine how shocked I was to discover this small detail that definitely makes you regret your actions. Saddler, the main villain behind the veil, is a well-done character with absolutely zero care in the world. Even when his plan seems to crumble before his very eyes at the ending, he still smirks and laughs at Leon.
What's so funny?
Intimidating and furthering the point that main villains can be done great. The overall memorabilia this game provides for me is unreal. It's almost like a fever dream. To think that a game I considered a huge deal as a kid would soon become re-released on the next-gen consoles, reinvented again for the PS4 and Xbox One, and reinvented one more major time with the remake in March of this year. It's just fucking crazy. Imagine if I handed you a rock. Yeah, a small rock that has, I don't know, a slight chisel in the tip. Some people you show the rock to might say, wow, it's fantastic. But others might look at it and say, wow, that's a really shitty rock. Now imagine 20-something years later, you track me down and show me that same rock, but now it's decorated with rare, genuine crystals in each new year that has passed. Consider this game a fossil. It's just never going away, and people are still digging it apart today. I love every segment of the game, basically, that doesn't involve the lesser tedious nonsense in the middle part of the story. For example, I will never not hate riding around in the fucking minecart for the quadrillionth time. Or how about this shit right here? 1,000 disgusting bugs that never seem to stop spawning? Are you losing your fucking marbles? I'm also not a fan of segments that require Leon to operate the boat. It slows the game down, and I always seem to speedrun my way past it any chance I can. Because I just hate being on that slow, dumb boat in the middle of the lake. I don't need to fucking come out here. Are you really trying to tell me that Leon couldn't just fucking go around? A lot of fans complain about one of my favorite segments, the Krauser knife cutscene fight. I can understand the impatience many others like myself feel when playing multiple times and having to go through this unskippable fight. Personally, I really liked it, and I remember being a kid I was extremely intimidated by Krauser's character. His voice, his cheesy lines, and his famous red beret all have permanently ingrained themselves into my corneas. Frustratingly enough, however, every time you die in this cutscene fight, you have to start it all over. There is a checkpoint halfway through, but I mean, if you get there the very first time you play this, then you're a lucky duck. It's tedious if you're a console player too and don't have the availability to hit both buttons at the same time like on PC. Regardless, I didn't mind the cutscene, but it did irritate me a few times having to replay it against my will. But what else about this goldenrod of gaming irritates me? Well, it's an old dog's howl by now, but I'm not always a fan of the whole standing still while shooting mechanic. I can see why some fans are supportive of it. Just feel like I should mention this as well. The last time I made a video of this context, somebody commented that they were confused about how I felt with the game because I said I loved a certain mechanic but didn't love the game itself. I am a very neutral person in life, and I'm sure if it were an option, I'd probably just be an NPC stuck staring at a damn wall talking to himself all day. I like to see what both sides have to offer to their arguments because I've seen both sides. Hopefully that explained it better. It's grueling to have to reload after missing your shots or having a crowd of overbearing assholes whispering weird shit in your face trying to kill you to death. I think it works here though, at least for the most part. I mentioned back in my favorite games of all time video that this was originally a horror game, at least when we first played it as kids. As time has gone on, I think it's safe to say that nobody's getting scared playing Resident Evil 4 today. Sure, I mean maybe you'll get surprised or a little overwhelmed, but this feeling naturally wears off when you realize how powerful Leon can become. By far, the scariest part about Resident Evil 4 is infamously the operating room. This is where the player is introduced to a deadly and terrifying enemy, Regenerators. It's in their namesake. These horrifying creations stumble towards you at a slow but steady pace, almost limping with each step. They emit some sort of noise that replicates someone being out of breath, but to me, it always just sounds like moderate chuckling, which is even creepier. It freaked me out and made me think the Regenerators were self-aware and were just laughing at me to intimidate me further, assholes. The whole shtick with the Regenerators is simple. They aren't vulnerable to any standard gunfire. Trying to shoot them with anything that isn't the rifle with a special scope does apparently nothing. However, I've tested this theory multiple times as anyone else would, and it turns out you really can kill the generator with any gun. It just takes a massive amount of time and patience depending on what gun you're using and how upgraded it is. I mean, you're obviously going to use the infrared scope once you figure out how to unlock it. That way you can see the invisible plagas that cling to the Regenerator's body like a leech. Okay, you're seriously telling me that this thing isn't visible to the naked eye? It's the size of my fucking fist. As I was saying, you don't need the scope. Dumping an entire mag of TMP ammo after it's been fully upgraded will kill a Regenerator with no problem, as will anything else. Although, I'd highly advise to take your time and get some distance between you and them before engaging. Then of course you have the Iron Maiden, which is just straight out of a fucking Silent Hill game. I mean, what the hell is this? Did Saddler really invent this mutation just off the whim? Did he have nightmares as a baby? Lord knows we all got a little frightened when we first encountered the Iron Maiden. I also have to mention one of the most boring slog fests I've ever endured in a video game, which is Ashley's segment. She can't fight back against enemies, so the player has to figure out a specific path to getting by, all the while dodging these fucking robe enthusiasts. Ashley can get rid of one of them as far as I know. There are 3 lamps in the second room where the mechanisms for the door are. After throwing all 3 of them, he'll die and you won't have to clench your butthole when mashing the keyboard any longer. You'll just have to listen to the dumbass speaking to you through the bars of the first room. Then, after solving another easy but tedious puzzle, you collect an important piece of the wall in the castle entrance, and finally you're back to being Leon. Thank God, I missed being able to defend myself. Keep in mind, it's moments like this in the game that do feel unique. Remember when you play as Ellie after Joel gets impaled by rebar? That's probably the same feeling I can put to words here, although The Last of Us probably did it better. Suddenly, the mood has switched. We're desperate to proceed and get back to the safety of Leon's warm embrace. You don't see it too often anymore in games, but I kind of like having the style of building up an excellent character and their inventory, then suddenly the mood switches and things start to slowly crumble. It's excellent storytelling at its finest. Well, maybe not the most excellent, but you get my point. Another fun fact I forgot to mention, the voice actor for Osmond Saddler is the same guy who did the voice of Jarl Balgruuf from Skyrim. It's like an all-star cast here. Another favorite scene of mine is any of the major boss battles. I mean, it doesn't get more iconic than this. Each and every boss offers a different tactic and wide variety of ways to kill. Obviously, some bosses are kind of repeated and some methods will not work, and probably aren't worth it in the slightest if you're trying to skim by. For the most part, I never find myself repeating the same tactic during each individual boss fight. It's crazy that a survival horror action game from 2005 is still this variable in its gameplay. Aside from boss battles, we also have to focus entirely on the environment and atmosphere. My favorite gothic scenery of all time in any game is probably the entirety of the castle segment. By far, the time and extravagance that Salazar has put into his architecture clearly depicts his Napoleonic narcissism. The village was like a Hills Have Eyes movie, but crossing into the castle almost feels like the Army of Dead. Or perhaps walking into a Renaissance painting that's been haunted. Just add Ganados into the picture and yeah, I'd say it's visually stunning even today. Sure, the pixels are obviously more visible now that we're adults, but I don't think we're ever going to see Resident Evil 4 in the limelight like before. Yes, the remake looks very promising and I'm not at all against it. I'm just nervous. This is a huge shoe to shove our feet into, and it only gets harder to wear as time goes on. The original Resident Evil 4 will always have that place in my heart that I protect like a silver fucking knight, but I am very curious and very excited to see what the remake has to offer. Alright, I did it. I have talked about my favorite game of all time in riveting detail. I'm aware that there's a few things I missed. I mean, there's a lot that I probably didn't talk about, and I only hope that you guys enjoyed this discussion. I think we can all agree that Resident Evil 4 is a very exciting and large topic, so if there's anything I missed here, definitely go check out other YouTubers who cover more of the game. It's full of possible conversations, theories, and the endless amounts of fun you'll have kicking the shit out of those who deserve it. The dated graphics and disturbing imagery only help to sell it along that this isn't just a video game. Its legacy lives on today, and I think it's one of the boldest and most daring decisions of all time to remake it. Can it actually be done? Is this really going to be the change we could only dream of? Who knows? Here's hoping that you and I can find out together when the game comes out, and hopefully you guys come back to visit when the remake comes out because we have a lot of content planned for it. We'd love to give our feedback by a long shot, and I'd love to do a comparison video with my thoughts. Regardless, I think it's safe to say that Resident Evil 4 might just be the biggest one in the series, and if the remake is half as fun as it looks, I'll be very satisfied. Thanks for watching, everyone. Thank you for being patient with me, and thank you for supporting us all this time. I always try my best to get content out for you guys that you like, and I care deeply about the production of these. If there's anything in particular you guys want to see, just let me know and I will check out more within the Resident Evil universe, maybe offer some more insight in a few ways. Enjoy your days, guys and gals. I'm beyond thankful for your support.
Alright, it's that time of the video where I beg and plead for you guys to like and subscribe for more content. If you're feeling dangerous, you can hit that bell too to get notifications the second we upload a video. It really helps us out, and thanks a lot for the support, guys.